In this video, we'll be going over IRS Form 14157, Return Preparer Complaint. You would use this tax form to file a complaint with the Internal Revenue Service against a tax return preparer or a tax preparation business. So we'll kind of briefly overview this form, and we'll discuss a little bit of background information, and then we'll go back and review this form line by line. So this is a 5-page document on the IRS website. However, the form itself is actually only about 2 pages. And there are several sections. You'll complete Section A, which is the return preparer information. In Section B, you'll actually outline your complaint specifically. And then in Section C, if you're the you'll include the taxpayer's information, whether or not you are the taxpayer. If you are the taxpayer, you only need to complete Section C, but if you're reporting on behalf of someone else who is actually the tax preparer, then you would complete Section D. This is an optional section. However, if the IRS needs additional information, then providing your information would help them in that regard. And the rest of the information is simply background, specifically discussing whether or not this is the right form for your particular situation. So I'm going to outline a couple of situations where you would use a different form instead. So if you believe that you've been a victim of identity theft, then you would not complete this form. You would complete IRS Form 14039, which is an identity theft affidavit. If you have a complaint about your tax return preparer that involves fraud, then you would actually submit this as supporting documentation for IRS Form 14157-A, which is a fraud complaint. If you needed to submit additional documentation, the form instructions contain additional forms like the IRS e-file signature authorization, 8879, or your allocation of refund, Form 8888, depending on if your refund got allocated to a wrong bank account, for example. So you would send this form to the IRS, but double check to make sure that the complaint that you have actually meets the requirements of this form. So as we walk through, I'll point out some more examples where the IRS kind of cautions you to make sure that this is the correct form for your complaint. So in Section A, you'll enter information about the tax return preparer. So in line 1, what is their status? Is it a tax attorney? Is it a CPA? Are they an enrolled agent? If you do not know what an enrolled agent is, simply that is someone that has been admitted to practice before the Internal Revenue Service as a tax practitioner, and they're recognized by the IRS as a tax professional in a similar manner as any attorney or CPA in good standing with their state board. Payroll service providers sometime will prepare tax returns, or if you don't know, or if it was someone else, then you would check the other or unknown box. And then in the remaining boxes, you'll enter as much information as you can about the tax preparer. So name and address go in box 2. If they have a business name and address that's different from their home address, you would outline their business name and address in box 3. Telephone number, including area code, the email address of the tax return preparer, their website in box 6. If you happen to know their electronic filing identification number, then that would go in box 7. If you know their PTIN, which is their preparer tax identification number, that would go in line 8. And then if they have an EIN as an employer identification number, then you enlist that in box 9. In section B, you'll outline the information about your complaint. So in box 10, what tax period or periods were impacted? Were they quarterly tax return, like an employer tax return quarterly basis? Was it income tax return? What was the actual tax period that was impacted? Was it multiple tax years? And then in 10B, did you pay a fee or did you not? And if you did pay a fee, then enter how much the fee was and then how did you pay the fee. For awareness, your tax return preparer is never allowed to charge a fee under certain circumstances, such as contingent on how big your refund is. They are not allowed to deduct the fee from your refund. So, if that is part of your complaint, definitely outline, the payment structure. If you feel like there is something suspicious, odds are there probably was something illegal. So make sure that you annotate that in the appropriate box. In line 11A, you'll review the series of complaints and then you'll check everything that applies. So theft of refund. If you had your refund diverted to an unknown account, that happens. If the tax return that was actually filed does not match the copy that you received because of alterations or changes to your tax return after you signed it. If the e-file was done either using inappropriate software, if they use pay stub information, or if they did not secure your signature before filing. If there's suspicion of misconduct, like they did not give you a copy of your return, if they misrepresented their credentials, if they agreed to file your return but did not, if they filed your return without you signing it, if they signed on your behalf, these are all things that a tax return preparer would not be allowed to do. It might not rise to the level of fraud, warranting you filing Form 14157-A, but these are all examples of misconduct. PTIN issues. So if every preparer is supposed to have a preparer tax ID number, and if they don't include it on the tax return, then there's very little way of the IRS being able to hold them accountable. If they indicated that you self-prepared your tax return, even though they prepared it for you, that's also not allowed. If there are false items or documents, this starts to fall under the category of fraud. False expenses, deductions, anything to boost your refund. And if you don't call this out, odds are very high that the IRS will catch this and then hold you accountable down the line. Employment taxes. If you are an employer and they did not file employment tax returns for you, if this is a tax return preparer actually self-reporting an event such as a data breach or a compromised PTIN, then this form would also be used for tax return preparers. Obviously not as a complaint, but simply to report something to do with the tax return preparer. If it's another complaint, then you have some space available to write that out. And again, this is the prompt that tells you to attach a copy of any documents that you've received from the return preparer. So, we'll include links to articles that we've written about each of these forms, just so that you can get a better understanding, what Form 8879 is, which is allowing the tax return preparer to e-file for you. Form 8888, which allocates your refund to multiple accounts if you want. Sometimes that form can be used to divert your tax return to an account that you don't have control over. Things of that nature. On the next page, in box 11B, you would simply provide any additional information that might be related to your complaint. And again, if that doesn't fit in that space provided, you can attach additional documentation. And we'll proceed through Section C as if you're not the taxpayer, and we'll kind of go over Section C and Section D. So for this, you would indicate that you are the taxpayer, and you'll complete, or you're not the taxpayer, but you're filing on behalf of John Smith. Enter a phone number, email address, and then you would obtain, the taxpayer must sign this form, and then the date of the complaint. So let's just say and then if you are not the taxpayer, then you would have to, you should complete this form if you are interested in having the IRS reach out to you in order to process, to get additional information about this complaint. So and and then what is your relationship to the tax return preparer? If you are the client, you would check that. If you're an IRS employee, you can also file a complaint. If you're a return preparer working in the same firm, check the appropriate box, or if you're working for a different firm, check that box. And that's it. So the taxpayer's signature is required on this form. You can submit this form to the IRS either by fax or by mail, and those instructions are at the bottom of the form. So fax number is 855-889-7957. If you mail this and supporting documentation, you would mark it Attention Return Preparer Office, 401 West Peachtree Street Northwest, mail stop 421D, Atlanta, Georgia 30308. So the rest of the form simply is a little bit more guidance. Again, IRS form 14157A. This is a fraud or misconduct affidavit. You would need to submit this form 14157 as well as the affidavit if your tax return preparer filed a return or altered your return without your consent, and you're looking for the IRS to address your account. You would submit both forms as well as anything else listed in the instructions for IRS form 14157A. If you have your identity stolen, you would use a different form 14039. If there's an alleged tax law violation, then you would submit form 3949A, which is a referral form for tax law violations. And then below that is specific instructions. If you are interested, we've written a complete comprehensive article outlining how to complete form 14157. We'll post that in the show notes or in the comments section. Simply go to teachmepersonalfinance.com, type in form 14157. You can type in any of these forms previously listed. I'll put links in the comments section of this YouTube video, but we have written articles at length about 14157A, 3949A, 14039. So we'll list all of those article links in the show notes on the YouTube channel. So if you like our articles, please subscribe to our newsletter. If you like our YouTube videos, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. And as always, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please either post them in the comment section or send me an email. Thank you very much and have a great day.